What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Sawdust Talk. Let's go! Hope you all are having a great night. We have got an insane episode lined up for you guys. Let me get my guests in tonight and get this thing going. So let's see here. Let's see here. Maker's Way coming in. What's up, TJ? How you doing?
Hey, dude, here we are.
How's everything going, man?
I mean, progress continues. It's hot as hell during the day, but we're making it work.
I know, right? It is awful here. Lightened up a little bit at least, right? Today, I mean, it's a
Yeah,
little bit cooler.
we went to the park at dusk today, and it was downright pleasant. So, it's gonna be all right.
Well, how's your shop builds coming in while we get Patrick and Jeff in here?
Greetings, Patrick. Good to see you, bud.
What's up, Patrick?
Well, hello there.
Yeah, the workbench is like phase one complete. My router lift came in the mail today, so that's kind of exciting. It's getting a router lift built into it. And then I'm trying to outsmart a great big bench vise also, so we'll see how that goes.
That's amazing. All right. Jeff doesn't want to join us apparently. Oh, there he is. Speaking of,
It's a radial arm saw.
what? Oh, hey!
Hey, didn't see you there. Hold on one second. I just got
Man.
blasted in the face with some sawdust from my fan. So give me 1 second.
So you're
That's
looking
always
good
the most
tonight.
fun.
All right. I'm all yours, babies.
All right, man.
Greetings,
So,
sir.
welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is Sawdust Talk. I'm Kyle Brewer, and I try to do woodworking every once in a while. We'll kick it over to TJ. Introduce yourself, and we'll go around the horn here.
Sure, I'm TJ Thayer with TJT Workshop. Do some woodworking, do some metalworking. I'm based in St. Louis, just like, well, Kyle's over here for me. I don't know where you guys have him. But yeah, just try to be a helpful Henry, and yeah, a lot of experience under my belt. Relatively new to Instagram, so yeah.
Awesome.
And then Oklahoma, Jeff.
Over to Jeff in the corner.
I'm Jeff. I have 3 tattoos, and this is my first day on Instagram.
I thought it was 2 truths and a lie.
Oh, I thought it was 3 lies and no truth.
That's the one.
That's it.
I feel like that's how we need to introduce ourselves next time. So, good idea. And finally, to our guest, Patrick. Patrick, man, welcome. Thanks for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do, man?
Thanks for having me. My name is Patrick, and I am Created Workshop. I am first and foremost a Christian. That is the biggest part of my life, has been for over 20 years now. And by trade, I am a technology journalist, which actually kind of bleeds over into woodworking a little bit, now that woodworking is getting to be more technology focused in certain aspects. But then obviously I do woodworking in the evenings, and on the weekends I'm a youth pastor. So really full plate, but loving every minute of it.
That's incredible, man. Thanks for being here, man. We appreciate you. And big shout out to George Supply Co. Big thanks to them for being a part of our show and supporting us in the channel. Really appreciate them. They've got a bunch of maker merch, maker apparel. I mean, they just have a lot of awesomeness going on. They just added like sanding discs, which I need to try out. And they've got walrus oil in stock. So they're basically a one-stop shop. So go check them out. Big thanks to them. Appreciate them for being here. Scott, you're awesome. If we have enough people on at the end of the show, maybe we'll do a giveaway. We'll see what the turnout is and how.
Has to be at least 17, right?
At least, yeah. I think that's the key number here. So we're at 16 now,
Okay,
so we're
wait.
pretty close.
So Scott can get us custom branded sanding discs.
I don't know
So-
about custom branded sanding discs, but like he's got sanding discs there now.
Get my
so it's
logo
pretty
on
awesome.
each disc.
There you go. Just
How long would it
watching
be
that
there,
money
though?
grind that wood away. Oh, that's majestic.
That'd be pretty legit, though, for sure. And if anybody has questions for Patrick, please feel free to put them in the little question mark box down by Jeff over there in the corner. Yeah, and with that, I'll kick things off. We'll go around the corner and kind of hit you with some hard-hitting questions, Patrick. So first and foremost, man, what is your favorite thing to do in the shop? I mean, I always see you doing some CNC stuff. Like, how did you get into that?
So I've always wanted one. And my wife and I, we try to make everybody's, or we try to get everybody a Christmas present every year, like extended family and everything. And 2 years ago, I tried to make people stuff. Like, it was really my first foray into woodworking, and most of it turned out horrible. I tried to make a router sled to like flatten my father-in-law's chessboard that we made him. And the chessboard was gorgeous, but it was an old router, so the bit wasn't straight in it, and it was just like, it was really bad. So then last Black Friday, part of what I do for work is, or the main part is, write about deals and sales on various stuff. So I had seen there was this little small CNC on sale for, I think it was $250. So I talked to my wife. I'm like, hey, let's get this. I've always wanted a CNC. This will help us make Christmas presents. It'll, you know, help the business. It'll do all these different things. And so we talked about it, and we ordered it and got it, used it, made a bunch of Christmas presents. It was small. It was 30 centimeters by 18 centimeters was the full width of it. And you actually couldn't even cut that much. So just under 10 by 6 is what it could cut. And so it did good. It did enough. But then I was actually talking to my parents, and they wanted me to build some stuff for them. And I told them, hey, my CNC can't do that. And they were amazing enough to invest in the business and got me a full-size CNC. So we found a really good deal on the Shipoko, the 3XXL, and picked that up. And it's been in the shop since January. I fought some issues with it initially, which is why it was, I guess, a little bit cheaper. But all that stuff's fixed, and Carbide 3D took care of all of it, replaced components, all with me not being the original owner, for free. So that's just a huge testament on their part. But that's kind of how I got my start in it. And now I'm working on making a bunch of different things. In fact, one of the latest things that I did is this little like bedside organizer. So this friction fits a magazine for an iPhone. This just kind of sets in there. It's my Apple Watch charger. But then I recessed out a camera housing so that way your camera would drop into it, and just a bunch of little things. And so these trays and just various different things. In fact, I've got a piece of wood on the CNC tonight that I'm either tonight or tomorrow going to be milling out a mitered box. So instead of cutting miters on a table saw or anything like that, the CNC is actually going to do all the mitering for the joinery on the box. So it's really cool, really fun.
That's awesome, man. That's
Robots are taking over the world, man.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm all about it. Yeah.
Okay, so I have sort of a 30,000-foot view question of the CNC process, right? Because
Sure.
my experience with a CNC machine was essentially middle school shop class. They gave us a little piece of colored plexi, and we could write words into a computer, and it would cut it out. When you're designing something like this tray, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you design the object in 3 dimensions and then go backwards and the software creates a tool path to cut it out? Or do you start with a blank stock that's roughly the size of the piece of wood that you're putting in there, and you start scooping out bits and creating the tool paths, and then you get the thing afterward?
So there's kind of a few ways you can go at it. A lot of CNCing is what they call 2 or 2.5D CNCing, which is kind of what that is. So it's not full 3D. And most CNC programs, whether you're talking Vectrix VCarve Aspire or Carbide Create or Carveco Maker, most of those you actually design on a 2D plane. So you'll draw a square here, a circle here, and then when you go to do your tool path, you tell the software, I want to use a bowl and tray bit here and a flat bit here and this end mill here. and then that will then give you a rendering of what you're looking at. Generally, if I'm doing a simple project, I will go that way. If I'm doing something more complex, like when I did this tray, I needed tight tolerances because that MagSafe charger had to fit in an exact spot that was exactly as distance down from where the camera housing was and different things like that. So for that, I actually started out in Fusion 360 and did a full 3D rendering of what it would look like first. And then I used that 3D rendering to make the sketch that I then made the tool paths from. So you could kind of go either way.
Okay.
That's awesome, man. That's cool. Thanks
Sorry,
for
I had to
walking
get up
us
there.
through
There
that.
was a spider like this slowly creeping my direction, so we had an intervention. If it's outside, it's his space. If it's in my shop, that's my space, buddy. He violated the treaty. So sorry about that.
That's awesome. Jeff, over to you, man. What question you have for Patrick?
I had a question. I was looking at your Instagram earlier. So you're getting into 3D printing, right? Is that a So
Yeah.
tell me about getting into, because it's kind of the exact opposite of CNC. Instead of a robot tearing down, it's a robot rebuilding. How do you plan on incorporating the two together?
So yeah, you're exactly right. CNC is what they call subtractive manufacturing. 3D printing is additive.
Those are big
They're
words.
really
I don't know those, but
they're really two different things. So this is one of the things that I designed. This holds a Ryobi battery. I technically could CNC this, but that wouldn't work very well.
Yeah.
So again, in Fusion is kind of my go-to program for anything 3D, anything in this 3D space. So I used a few different tools, be it the calipers or some of the tools are actually 3D printed to help me find like the radius of this curve. And I took and modeled a battery, and then from that battery that I modeled this, so that way it would hold the battery. And so they're really just two totally different realms of stuff, but at the same time, they can be used together. So these are hold down clamps for the CNC that are 3D printed. It's plastic. I don't care if the bit runs into it. It's plastic, but it's also strong enough to hold material down. And if I break it, I print another. And 3D printing has a lot of different places in woodworking. You can use it to print a radius gauge for a corner that you use on a router table. And if you aren't comfortable with 3D design, and a lot of people aren't, they don't know where to start with it, you can just get a 3D printer for $150, $200 on Amazon. And then there's websites out there that you can just go and say, hey, I want to download this file and print it. And 9 out of 10 times, they just print perfectly right away. You don't have to really do anything. Whereas you can't really do that with the CNC because each machine has different capabilities, how fast it can run, how deep it can cut in a single pass. 3D printing is really easy to approach because the only variable is temperature, really.
That's incredible. That's cool.
Yeah, I use 3D printed jigs for sharpening my bowl gouges and setting up my angle grinder and stuff like that. I've used them for setting up like segmented work for the various different miter angles to do like a 15 or a 20 piece ring and stuff like that. They make incredible jigs. And are you using a filament printer for the most part?
Yeah, I'm doing FDM.
Okay, cool.
That's awesome. So where are you like selling your products that you're putting together?
Etsy is my primary place that I sell stuff. So that's where I've got really only 3D printed products there. So I've got these Ryobi battery holders. I have some Milwaukee battery holders. And then something that I didn't really see in the space is this right here. It doesn't look like much, but this mounts to any standard 65 millimeter router, which is what the average CNC uses. And then on the end of it, that's a GoPro mount. So if you want to capture the CNC process, this just goes right around the spindle, attaches to it, and you can go with that. And so that my Etsy is where I sell my stuff, most of my stuff right now. I have stuff listed on Facebook. Haven't made a single sale there yet with any of the stuff. I'm thinking once I get more into actually building the projects with the CNC and it's wood, most people don't want to pay for shipping on that, so that might be a little bit more locally, but Etsy is where most of my stuff is right now.
Yeah, it's tough on Facebook building things to ship because then you're fighting with people from all over the country. Most of the things I build that sell on Facebook are larger things that I'm not gonna ship, and not as many people are gonna buy a hand built, coffee table and have some random dude ship it from Wisconsin down to Oklahoma. So Facebook's tough to sell on based off the products, but Etsy, I mean, if Etsy's working, I wouldn't even, honestly, I would use Facebook as practice, see what kind of questions customers have for you, and that's pretty much it. You're basically putting the time in just to learn your responses to mostly dumb questions.
I feel like Facebook's a good place to like join like those selling groups too, and like get your product out there to people. Like I think that's kind of what I've seen and used.
And I'm trying to remember who it was. Somebody was saying that when they're trying to figure out the idea for the next thing they're going to build, they get on Facebook groups and they see like what are people asking for the most. Like, oh, I can't. Does anybody know what this is, or how to get this part? If you can tap into those groups and see, like, if, for example, for me, if somebody's like, oh, everybody keeps asking about this specific like round coffee table, so I'm using that because I built 3 this week, then I know like, oh, that's what the market's looking for is a bunch of round coffee tables. Or somebody's looking for this specific thing. Oh, does anybody have files for this? If you can design files for 3D printing, you got it made because you know what people are looking for. So Facebook can be useful on that. Selling 3D printed things, that's got to be tough. I see them pop up all the time because I have a friend who prints most of my stuff, and because I'm too dumb to know how to work one of those. But self-deprecating as well. But he sells, I think, on Etsy as well, and he does pretty well there. And I don't think he sold one thing on Facebook also. Like,
yeah, I'm thinking Facebook's going to be more for once I get to, like you're saying, the stuff that isn't nearly as easy to ship.
Yeah, for sure. And people dog on Facebook all the time, but man, Facebook's been really good to me. It's just people expect you post something and it sells. Like it's a numbers game. People who complain about Facebook have probably never done sales in their life because you got to get a bunch of no's before you get a yes. It was like 20 no's, but it's not that bad at all. I've been happy with what I've done on Facebook. So don't let that deter you that you haven't made one dime yet on Facebook.
All right, so I have a question about fixturing on your CNC table also. One, I love the design of your table with the dog holes and then those camming levers for workpiece holding. That's super cool, and I don't spend a whole lot of time cruising CNC router stuff, but I haven't seen that a lot. And I'm guessing it was just a toolpath that gets thrown around in forums or something, but is there a reason why you prefer those cam levers over T-tracks and stuff like that hold from above or push from the side differently?
So the dog holes are actually from the original owner of the CNC. He had, and if you like the cam levers, I'll show you this. These are the cam levers that he used. That's massive.
It's pretty freaking clever. I mean, it's huge, but like, it's really clever.
The ones that I use are much smaller, and they're like this. And I did it with threaded inserts, mostly because you can have threaded inserts across a huge swath of it, and I don't have nearly all of my threaded inserts in here. I need to actually replace the whole wasteboard. But T-track is just expensive. To buy a bunch of T-track to put through the whole thing adds up really fast. And you can, with the threaded inserts, you can use either a cam clamp like this or one like this that comes from the top and holds down, or it's a positive stop this way, or whatever. So doing the threaded inserts, just in my opinion, is more versatile than doing the T-Track for less money, or even just as versatile, because I guess you can do all of that with T-Track, but you still have to invest in the T-Track up front. So it's just, you can buy a pack of, I think it was 100 threaded inserts for like $12. And then you're right, it's just a tool path. So you can either make your own tool path, or there's people like Meyer's Workshop for the Shapeoko, and I believe he does Onefinity as well, that you can just buy his file for pretty cheap, and it gives you all of the vectors. You bring it into your program, it's already sized properly, so the only thing you have to do is just generate the tool path. It goes through, drills everything, you thread your inserts in, and you're done.
Okay, and then is there an appeal to using like PLA or the MDF cam locks? Just it makes occasional tool strikes, or if you have to mill outside of your workspace where you're actually holding, it's just less of an issue. Does that even appeal to you, or?
All of my prints are actually PETGs. That way they're more heat resistant. But the reason that I go with either the plastic ones or the wood hold downs is right now, and here I'll kind of show you what I've got on the CNC. So I've got this piece of wood that I'm milling down right now to turn into that mitered box. But in doing that, I was using a 1-inch flattening bit on the CNC. And so to have it come and flatten edge to edge, it had to overhang the side. So while sometimes, like now, it's to a point where I can use double-sided tape to hold this down, before I got to this point, it was actually so bowed that I had to use traditional clamping methods to hold this down to get a flat reference face before I could then flip it onto that flat reference face and keep milling from the other side.
Makes sense.
That's legit.
Well, it's also a pretty piece of walnut you got there, bud.
It is. And my wife last year got this massive piece of walnut, and it was 10 foot long, live edge that we had as a shelf in the living room. And then she got tired of the shelf, so she put a plant wall up, and I confiscated the walnut to use for projects.
Yeah, waste not, want not, man. That's gorgeous
Right?
stuff right there. Yeah, and the sapwood's really bright on it too. That's pretty cool that it hasn't colored too much. I was watching your reel of surfacing that finish off of it, and I was like, ooh, it's gonna be real nice under there.
I love it.
All right, so question from Send Me Woodworks. You kind of
Can
talked
we,
about this a little bit.
Can we address the earthquake that you just went through, Kyle?
My phone is melting. I have an ice pack on the back of it to cool it down. Apologies for that. It's hot. It's hot in my garage.
Yeah, no, I turned off my air conditioner because it's so loud and it's, whew.
I turned off my fan, but yeah, it's.
Kyle, if you're gonna do another one of these with me on it, you may have to come do a remote visit to my shop. It is air conditioned because I have a mansion of a wood shop.
Yeah.
Stay nice and cool.
We're gonna have to broadcast from your brewery one of these days. I'm just throwing it out there.
I absolutely concur. Live from Bluewood, indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So back to questions, Patrick. So from Send Me Woodworks, what is the best place to get 3D printers? Kind of what do you recommend in that space in getting started?
I know Send Me Woodworks is actually here local to me. We don't have a Micro Center here, sadly. Micro Center is going to be your best place to get them if you want to go in person. And in fact, Micro Center often runs, I believe it's an Ender 3 Pro for $99, which is a crazy good deal. And Creality, who makes the Ender 3, is one of the biggest in the business when it comes to 3D printers. So if you're by a Micro Center, that's going to be your best shot. Otherwise, Amazon. Mine, I actually got for review for my day job, so that's where that one came from, but it's sold on Amazon. It's $280. Let me see.
TJ, you were nodding your head. You have that one from Micro Center?
Yeah, I've got an Ender 3. It's a pretty early model, but the fidelity of the prints that I've been able to accomplish with it are pretty surprising for a sub $200 3D printer. I mean, it's got quirks, and there's no shortage of people who have come up with clever ways to modify it. The fun thing about 3D printing, and Patrick can expand on this also, is that you can print parts for your 3D printer to make your 3D printer print parts better, which is kind of fun and redundant in that regard. But yeah, Creality, I'll stand behind my Creality. It's awesome. And with a 12-inch by 12-inch theoretical build plate that's really more like 8 by 8 of it is precise, it's a really, really nice tool.
That's awesome.
The Crealities are great. Mine's a Voxel Lab is the brand, the Aquila S2. It's actually a subset of FlashForge, which is another huge name in space. But it's about $260-ish right now on Amazon. It's good. If you can get the $99 deal, absolutely just start there. Like, even though the Ender 3 Pro is not the best printer in the world, you really can do a lot to make them better. In fact, if you ever are interested in learning more about that, the origin of the 3D printers that we use came off of what they called REP, R-E-P, where they would use 3D printers to build parts for bigger 3D printers so that way they could print bigger parts. It was really cool how like all of that came to give us an affordable 3D printer that we could buy today.
That's insane. That's cool.
Yeah, and with that Creality, take your time, build it right, and then understand that you're not going to do great right off the bat, but you will do great very soon.
It takes some time to get your bed leveled, but taking the time to get the bed leveled all the way across everything is key. If you don't do that, you're not going to get a good print. And it's going to be frustrating. And it took me probably 3 or 4 hours to get everything dialed all the way in after it was assembled. But now I don't even think about it. I clean off my print plate and I send it to the printer. And a couple hours later, I come back and it's done. And now that I say this, the next print that I do is going to do this, but I've never had any spaghetti. I've never had any problems with a print failing outside of my own problems with that print. If I did something wrong in the design and I didn't put support on an overhang because it can't print midair. So if I didn't put support there, okay, well, that's my fault. That's not the printer's fault. But anytime that I have had a properly designed file, I've never had a problem because I took the time to set it up in the beginning.
I have printed spaghetti. I have printed spaghetti on hour 14. I have.
Do you use? I guess it's Obico now, but it used to be the Spaghetti Detective.
Oh no! I just tear it off, scrape the goop off of the extruder head. Normally, when I end up printing spaghetti, it's because like I had a bed adhesion problem or something, and something will slip. So again, it's on me, but yeah, something will slip, and then things will get gummy, or it won't deposit properly, and then you end up printing spaghetti while you're sleeping.
That's crazy.
So what's the two of you, Kyle? You haven't done any 3D printing, right? Yeah, me neither. We're both the losers. What's the biggest or longest prints that you guys have done?
Mine was 8 or 9 hours, and it was only that long because of the number of items that I was printing. I think I was printing 6 or 8 of these, and so it took like 8 or 9 hours. I started it before I went to bed, and it finished at like 10 or 11 o'clock the next morning.
That's crazy. So how long do like prints that you make usually take?
It depends. This is 2 hours or so. This is like an hour and a half. This is about an hour 15. These were about an hour a piece or so. It really varies depending on how much infill you do, because this is not solid. None of these prints are solid.
Right.
So it depends on how much infill you do and then what layer height you do it in. So just like if you're working on a CNC and you're telling it how deep of depth you want it to take per pass, or even you're using a router flattening sled, you tell the 3D printer how tall you want each layer to be. And so the shorter the layer, then the more layers it takes to get to finish, and they move fairly slowly. But also the higher fidelity print you get when you go with smaller. So I've actually got a profile, if I'm just prototyping something, that which takes 2-ish hours on a full print, hour and a half to 2 hours on a full fidelity print, I can print in maybe 15 minutes, because I remove all of the support. I remove essentially everything, and it's just an outer shell. So that way I can rapid prototype, and then once the rapid prototyping's done, then I spend the extra money in filament, the extra money in power, and in time to print the final product. But because I rapided so many times, and the time it takes one of these, I can print 6 of the others.
Yeah,
That's crazy. How much does something like that cost you to make, like in the filament?
I want to say this is less than $1. These were maybe 30 cents or so. With 3D printers, your biggest thing is time. And I've looked a lot into what to charge. And most people, you just charge by the hour, and you normally start at about $1 to $2 an hour. And then high end, you end somewhere at the $6 an hour range, $6 to $7 an hour. And that includes everything. That factors in filament cost, power consumption, your time, all of that gets factored into that. Obviously, if you're doing the 3D design outside of that, then that would be billed separately. But if it's just, printing this, that's kind of what you generally go off of.
That's cool.
So I have a question. You mentioned the filament. This question's from me. What filament do you use in your 3D printer, and do you want to venture into other types of filament, and which kinds? 100% my question that I came up with.
I use Overtrue PETG, and I chose PETG because...
All right. Well, let me stop you there. What is that?
Yeah, I'm lost.
Okay, let me look up what the actual word or the definition for PETG is, because I honestly don't remember. It is...
I mean, Jeff, are you thinking the same thing? Because I'm like,
yeah, I'm just like, I don't want to say it. If everybody else gets it, I'll play along.
It basically, it's the chemical makeup of the plastic. So polyethylene, something glycol is what it is. So it's the composition of the plastic. PETG is commonly used in things like a soda bottle, a 2-liter bottle. So it's considered food safe on the plastic side of things. Now, 3D printed stuff is not really food safe because there's a bunch of ridges that can harbor bacteria and all that stuff. But PETG in and of itself is, but it's also, it withstands higher heat tolerances. So PLA, which is generally the simplest filament to print with, and a little bit cheaper than PETG, can start to get to where it can mold at about 45 to 50 degrees Celsius. So that could be a hot garage or a hot car. So in the shop, my shop right now, if I was going to look at the thermostats, probably in the high 80s, low 90s, and it's 10:30 at night. So I go with PETG because of that, and I have never had a problem printing with it. Some people do. I never have. For other types of filament, there are a lot of other types of filament out there. ABS is probably one of the other big ones. ABS is stronger than PETG. Oh, PETG is also stronger than PLA. So it's kind of a middle ground. ABS is a lot stronger than PETG and PLA, but it actually off-gases when you print with it. So if you're going to print with ABS, you really should have your printer in a sealed enclosure that ventilates outdoors. PETG is stronger than PLA, not as strong as ABS, but it doesn't off-gas. So it's easier to work with. it's, whatever, all of that other stuff, and it's stronger than the cheaper stuff. So that's kind of why I landed on it. 1 kilogram roll runs about $22, and something like this maybe uses, actually, I'll use this because I just printed this. This uses like 15 grams of filament. So, and you buy it in a 1 kilogram spool.
That's crazy.
I will retain all of that information. That was so much. That was so much info.
There's a lot going on there.
I know. I wish I knew what you were talking about, man. I hope somebody else does.
Does
I mean, I'm
anybody
picking
want
up what
one,
you're
though?
putting down, man.
Yeah.
Do you need to print PETG in an enclosure, like to keep the temperature up, or can it just extrude right onto the work surface?
No, it extrudes right onto the work surface.
Very cool. So you just have to run it at a higher temp, that's all?
Yeah, I print it like 255C with an 80C bed.
Very cool.
And so you kind of mentioned this, but just want to kind of go back through that. You don't have to like exhaust any of that outside, or how does that work?
If you want to get really technical, anytime you heat up plastics, there is microplastics released into the air. And if you, depending on what your extruder, so the extruder is actually what it pushes the filament through to come out. Depending on what your extruder is, you could have PTFE, which is Teflon, inside of the extruder. So if you want to get really technical, you probably should exhaust most 3D printers regardless of what you're printing, because you do not want to breathe heated Teflon and the microplastics there. But my printer is what's called a direct drive extruder, so I really don't have a PTFE tube touching my hot end. It's in there, but it's not getting as hot, and I'm printing filament that doesn't off gas. So I don't exhaust. I guess the smartest thing would be to, but that's like, how many of us in the shop have made cuts on the table saw and not put on our mask? Kind of the same thing. Now, if you're doing ABS, you absolutely need to. That's going into a long sanding session. You're going to put your mask on for that. If you're printing ABS, absolutely exhaust. But if you're doing the regular stuff,
Yeah, I mean, I will admit that it's slightly aromatic. It does smell like warm plastic smells, right? And so taking that into consideration, like if I wouldn't set a 3D printer up in a newborn baby's bedroom, right? Noise aside, like that doesn't seem like a good place to do it. But like if it's in your basement or in your garage workshop or something like that, and you're not standing there sneefing up all the fumes, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape.
So what is isn't it something ridiculous, like the average person consumes enough microplastics, like the amount of a credit card, like every month or something?
Awesome.
I haven't heard that.
Look it up. It's insane. Maybe it's like a week. I think a week is too ridiculous, but it's crazy how much microplastics. And you're over there not ventilating it out. You probably got like 3 credit cards in your belly right now.
Yeah, it could be as much as a credit card a week.
Oh my god! Man. I mean,
That's what I
maybe
get
they're not
for
that bad
chewing
for you. I
on
don't know.
soda bottles.
Yeah, no.
That's comforting.
Yeah. I prefer lead paint over microplastics.
Well, that's good chewing paint you got there, man. You don't want to get rid of that.
It's sugary. I talked about this
It tastes
before.
good.
Lead paint has like a sugary sweetness to it. Don't try it, but if you do, you'll agree.
All right. J-May Woodworks wants to let us know that he hadn't got a CNC, or they hadn't gotten a CNC because they're intimidated by the learning curve. How hard is it to learn for someone who has no experience? Sorry, I had to pull up the rest of the question.
It's really not. So if you want to start with super simple software, Inventables Xcarve, or Inventables makes the Xcarve, but they also have a online software called, let me look this up, Easel. It's web-based. It can be your design software and your controller in the same thing if you have a supported CNC, which I actually just partnered with SaneSmart. And SaneSmart is kind of like the Creality of the CNC world. They make low-cost CNCs that are actually pretty good. That's what I started with, was the SaneSmart. But easel is extremely simple. If you can use Microsoft Paint, you can probably figure out how to use easel. It's so simple, and it'll get you started. Now, easel is very limited in its abilities, but it's free and it's web-based, and it's a good starting point. And then from easel, you could go to something like Carbide Create, which is made by Carbide 3D that makes the Shipoko. It's also free software, a little bit more complex than easel, but a lot more ability in the software. But truthfully, if you can draw a circle and then click some buttons and follow what they recommend you run at, you can use a CNC. It doesn't have to be super complex.
Does it have to be a perfect circle? Because I can't draw a good circle.
Well, that's the thing, is the software draws the perfect circle for you. You just click.
Done. Magic.
You're in, right? You're sold?
Maybe one day.
Order tonight.
Yeah. I mean, my part-time gig, we have an Avid 5x9 CNC. So, but I don't know. It's a learning curve that I'm not ready to approach yet, I guess is the best way to put that.
Honestly, when you are, unless you're wanting to dive in head first, I would say and if you go to Amazon and look up 3018 CNC, you'll find half a dozen of them, or a dozen or more, for like 150, 200 bucks.
Yeah.
And that CNC works just like your Avid that you have at your side gig. The only difference is you run slower speeds because you're not as rigid and your spindle isn't spinning as fast. But if you just want to learn the basics, start there. If anybody wants to learn the basics of CNC and you don't want to drop $1,500 on a used Shipoko, or $3,000 on a Onefinity, or $25,000 on a fully blown Avid, starting with a $150 one, if you break that bit, you can get a 10-pack of them for $15 on Amazon. If you break the CNC, it was $150. It's not that bad, and it's a great learning place.
Yeah.
And then, so you mentioned a little bit about spindle speed. On your Shipoko, essentially, you've got a router motor in there.
Yeah.
Do you ever adjust the speed of the router, or does it just run at 28,000 and you leverage that to make sure that the machine travels at a speed that it can eat your substance?
No, I actually change the speed quite often. So right now it's set to 2, out of the arbitrary 1 to 5, which is approximately, I think, 12,000 RPM. And I'm there because when I was doing this flattening using the 1-inch bit, I was moving at 130-ish inches per minute is the metric of speed. And I could even go faster than that. But if I ran my bit any faster, the bit was spinning so fast that it was essentially spinning in place in an area that it's already cut.
Oh.
So you want to balance your bit speed with the movement speed. And when you use a program like Vectrix VCarve or Aspire, or Fusion, which I see that question about Fusion, we'll address that in a second, they actually take into account what's called chip load. And chip load is a measurement of your movement speed plus or multiplied by, or whatever it does to get to it, your bit speed, how fast is the bit spinning, plus how many flutes the bit has. And the whole thing is trying to make sure that each flute of that bit does not get loaded down heavier than it should, because with a CNC, you want to make chips, not sawdust. If you're making sawdust, nothing is pulling the heat away from the bit. If you're making chips, that chip has enough mass that as it flies off, it's actually taking some of the heat away from that bit. And then to address the Fusion question, Fusion, to start with, is probably the most robust design program you could use for 3D modeling if you just want to model up a table with your joinery and see it in real space. If you want to do a 3D printed object like this, or if you want to do CNC, probably the most robust program out there. It can be very complex, and I can't tell you how many tutorials I watched and had no idea what to do. I kind of knew the basics, but that was it. And I really learned it by saying, here's a project that I actually have to work on. I know what my measurements are. I know what I need it to look like. I know all of these things. I'm going to make this. And just set out to do it. I would try to do something and I'd run into a brick wall and say, I don't know what to do, but I know what I want to do. So let me figure out how to do that. And then I've just learned as I go. Even yesterday or the day before, I found that it has a function called project, which you can create a sketch, which is just like what it sounds like. It's a sketch that you can put circles on, that you can then take that circle and, extrude it and make it tall, or you can use it to cut or whatever. You can also save that sketch as a file that you can bring into Carbide Create or Vectrix VCarve to mill from. And I was tracing my object. So I would design in Fusion, and I've tried to do toolpathing in Fusion, but Fusion is really geared towards much more powerful machines, and I just really haven't taken the time to learn the toolpathing. So I design in Fusion, and then I move that design to either VCarve or Carbide Create. And before, I was taking and laying my pieces out and then tracing them on this new sketch. And then just yesterday or the day before, I found out that there's a project function that you can create your sketch, and then you just click on the object, and it takes that object sketch, or that takes that object's design and just puts it right on that sketch. You don't have to trace anything. It took a 25-minute process and made it 2. So even a year into it, I'm still really learning it. But once you get to the point of using Fusion, it's free for hobbyists. But then if you want to use it on a commercial level, they actually have a small business license that gives you their paid version, which is normally $40 a month or $26 a month if you pay yearly, for free for up to 3 years. And that gives you all of the functions of Fusion. You can use it and put different wood species in there. So that way, when you're doing something, you can see, what is walnut going to look like with this when I have a maple dowel, or any of that. You can do all of that with it. And it's really, really useful. Even if you're never going to 3D print, you're never going to CNC, just to design is so useful with it.
That is a lot of knowledge right there.
I'm getting so much smarter.
Right. Back to something that, it makes sense to me. Do you want to get into the laser cutting game? What is your next big tool purchase? Kind of where are you going with your shop?
My next big tool purchase will probably be something like a drum sander. I do eventually want to get into the laser cutting game, but with that, since it's so similar to CNC, I'm going to probably sidestep the cheaper laser engravers and eventually go right to something that's one of the bigger Laguna units, or the best cutters, or the bigger CO2 powered units that can actually cut instead of just engrave. So I do want to get into laser cutting, but that's probably going to be more down the road. The more immediate thing is probably just going to be something like a drum sander, because I can't tell you how many times that would have been useful already, to just send something through there that I don't want to send through the planer, and it would just be so nice.
That's awesome. Let's see here. TJ, Jeff, you guys have any other questions? Otherwise, we can hit them with a couple of quick ones here at the end.
I just want to plant the seed of getting a CNC plasma table, because I think, Patrick, you seem like the kind of guy who would have a lot of fun using the fourth state of matter to manipulate the world at your fingertips using a keyboard. That's some good stuff there.
You trying to turn him into a supervillain? Gee.
What are you talking about, man? He's already got a robot army making his goodies for him. He's like a money vault, and some childhood trauma away from pulling it off. Patrick, I believe in you. You can be a supervillain if you want.
Let's go. Plasma tables are really cool. A friend of mine is really into like off-road trucks and stuff like that. And he does woodworking professionally. His dad owns a cabinet shop in Chattanooga. And we've talked about stuff like plasma tables and the big, the huge CNCs that have like flood coolant and the fourth axis or even fifth axis machining. And that stuff is really cool.
Yeah, I think she was on Bad Shop Advice at one point in time, but there was a young lady who was doing 3D printed metal stuff.
Oh,
And
yeah.
metal additive manufacturing that is also milling. And oh man, it's just the world is wild and robots can make neat stuff. Anyway, Cornerstone wants to know. Yeah, Cornerstone wants to know what bit you use the most on your CNC.
1/4 inch end mill, 1/4 inch down cut end mill.
Okay, to just make a flat bottom cut, no V flutes or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, because most of my stuff that I've been doing is a lot of pocketing. So the 1/4 inch down cut, it removes a good amount of material. You can move it fairly quickly because it's pretty rigid, and the down cut leaves a really nice top surface. I am starting to get into, I just had this come in, so this is a bowl and tray bit, and that'll probably get a lot of use. And then I've got I have a few V-bits and some 1/8 inch end mills, but I haven't really put these to use too much yet. The 90 degree is going to get a lot of use here in a little bit when I do that box. But the 1/4 inch down cut, it's so versatile. It can pocket, it can profile, and you could even use that if you're doing like a 3D design. You could use that to hog out a lot of the waste material, and then you have like a 16th inch ball nose end mill that'll go in, and all that does is just a really shallow pass that removes any of the excess waste material to give you that smooth finish. But the 1/4 inch is just, it's probably the most versatile bit for the
And your
CNC.
1/4 inch is like a 2 flutes with carbide, almost like a router bit, or is it like a 4 or 6 flute high speed steel kind of job?
Let's see. I've got one around here. Just a regular 2 flute, like a router bit.
Sure, like a high speed steel bit. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Let's see here. Any more other questions? Let's see here. Any experience with the Maker Made CNC? Woolly Pendles wants to know because she wants to be your friend, if so.
I have not seen that one yet. Let me look it up.
We were just talking to her the other week.
Okay, I've seen a video on that one. But I've never used it. Those are really interesting, and how they work and everything. I don't know that I would have a ton of use for something like that personally, but if you do a lot of like massive stuff, that would definitely be probably the cheapest CNC on the market to be able to handle like a 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Yeah, when I was looking into that one, I was going to start building custom arcade cabinets for people. And because of the size of the pieces that you're making and wanting to do slightly more complex cuts, that while you can knock them out with a jigsaw, having the precision of the router, the end mill in there, it's pretty crazy. And then when you are on your machine, your bit can, assuming that your fixturing is fine, you can plunge completely through your workpiece and go cut through the spoil board, right? And then pull the piece completely off, or do you leave a little skin on the back and then kind of go back through with a coping or a dovetail saw?
It really depends. So if you're doing a lot of all the way through profiling and you're cutting all the way through, you can use double stick tape, which I kind of advise. I've got to figure out a better way to do that because I had a bit that is now completely gummed up with double stick tape that I have to figure out how to fix, and probably just some vinegar to dissolve that. But that's a problem if you're doing that. And but most CNC software has what's called tabs, and so you can either, some CNC software will automatically do that around it, and others you just click where you want it. And all that does is just leave little small tabs, however big you want them. Mine are normally an 1/8 inch wide by a 1/16 inch tall. They don't have to be huge. And so it just leaves a few tabs around there, and then you go through and you just kind of round those off. I use an oscillating tool and cut those tabs off, and then you can use a router to do it. I've seen other people, Andy Bird Builds on YouTube and here on Instagram, if you've ever seen him, he does a lot of CNC full time, and found a way to really save a lot of time was he did his profile pass maybe a third of the way down. And then he went to the bandsaw and cut off there, and then to the router table and used a flush trim bit and took it the rest of the way. So that way he didn't have to take, you know, whatever it is, an 1/8 inch cut or a 1/16 inch depth of cut all the way around a dozen times to get to the bottom. It was 3-4 times, bandsaw, and then to the flush trim bit. And I think he saved multiple hours on a single project doing that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's clever. I like that.
So last question here from Hayden Custom Woodworks, Kyle over there. Aside from printing and CNC, what woodworking projects are you working on or coming up for you?
I'm going to be taking and expanding. We just picked up, because I didn't have time to build it at the time, a cedar planter box off Facebook Marketplace. There was a guy selling them for not too crazy of a price, so we just picked that up. But now my wife wants stuff to expand off of the sides of it, and then a table built out back for it, and so it's just easier to build all that stuff. So I'm going to be working out back on kind of expanding our little garden probably the next couple weeks here. Outside of the CNC, that's probably the next big woodworking project that I'll be working on.
Nice. Anyone else have any final questions here?
Do you want to brag about your family at all? We talked shop like the entire time, but yeah, you want to brag about your family, your understanding and forgiving wife, or any offspring?
No children yet, but my wife is really amazing and super supportive of everything that I do out here. Truthfully, I've not made a whole lot of money making any of these projects yet. And it's always been a promise of, you know, if we get this table saw, it'll help me to do stuff better to where we can make more things to sell. Or, oh, if we get the CNC, I can make all these things to sell with it. And it's just, it never pans out that way. But she's always been so supporting, you know, just always helping me figure out if there's some way that if there is something that would really benefit, like when I moved from a job site table saw to the Delta 36 725 T2, which I know a lot of us have, just helping figure out a way that we could do that, sell the old tools to make way for the new stuff. And I honestly couldn't do any of this without her. It's amazing how supportive she is of it.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. That's kind of an awesome way to end it. Anybody else have anything they want to throw it out and close it off with?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I guess my only thing is I've been playing around with an SLA printer that uses the liquid resin and a slightly higher fidelity. I got it about 2 years ago. I guess it was sort of pre-pandemic, but not awesome for prototyping things and stuff, but for making your final project and something that is cool to look at. It's pretty neat technology. I don't know if you've dabbled or have any interest in getting one. Mine's from EPAX is the company that makes it. It's a cool little unit. So if you want to nerd out over 3D printing stuff, shoot me a message after this is all wrapped up.
Definitely. I've seen them, and I've got friends who have them. I don't know. It just seems like it's such a process to have to do that and then have the wash basin and all the different stages that you have to do an SLA print. But if you're doing models or something like that, you know, if you play games or you're doing board games and you're doing models, that is the only way to go. FDM just wouldn't look good.
Jeff, any closing
Oh,
remarks?
yeah. Bad shop advice. Some Thursdays at 10 p.m. YouTube.com/Johnny Builds. Watch some of my camera work. I don't think I'm in his last video that we did. He mentions me. Yeah, I'm in it. Johnny Builds. YouTube.com/Johnny Builds. He only has 512,000 subscribers, so we need more. So he can pay me more. Maybe tomorrow we may be on Bad Shop Advice. I don't know. If the guys can't make it, then I'll just grab TJ. Maybe he'll come on and we'll shoot the old BS.
I'll be there watching.
There you go.
All right, Patrick, give us a motivational quote to get us all back into the shop tomorrow and the day after and the day after. What keeps you going, bud?
It's funny. I was watching a Mr. Beast video of all things the other day, and it was a quote that he said that somebody else asked him what was the most motivational quote that he heard, and it was, "You're crazy until you're successful, and then you're a genius."
I like that.
Like,
all right.
I like that a lot.
I dig it.
That's a great way to end it. Patrick, thanks, man, for being on and being a part of the show. Thank you to TJ and for Jeff for helping me co-host. Appreciate it, guys. To everybody watching, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Take care, guys.
Awesome meeting you, Patrick. Thanks for coming on, bud.
Good to meet you guys too.